A rapper by the name of Killer Mike recently went on Huffington Post to talk about this new issue that's been popping up among rappers. It turns out that a lot of prosecutors are using rap music as evidence against the rappers when it comes to criminal cases. Now, he specifically mentioned two notorious cases as of late. One involves a rapper by the name of Brandon Duncan, and the other one is McKinley Phillips. Now, let me give you some more details on that. Among those directly affected by this controversial practice are rappers Brandon Duncan and McKinley Phipps.
We did the story on Tiny Do.
Tiny Do. Good for you. Yeah. You remember it.
I'm Brandon Duncan. I remember Brandon Duncan too. So I think that's his name.
Brandon Duncan is Tiny Do. Now, they popularly go by the stage names Tiny Do and Mac, respectively. Songs from both of these rappers have been used in their individual cases and presented by prosecutors as evidence in effort to convict them of crimes. Now, with Brandon Duncan, or Tiny Do, it's a case in San Diego, and it's actually a pretty serious case.
It's pronounced San Diego.
San Diego. Apparently,
what does it mean, San Diego?
It means a whale's vagina.
It does?
Yeah, it's right. Yeah.
Agree to disagree. There was a rash of drive-by shootings, and so prosecutors are trying to figure out who did the drive-by shootings. And so they realized that Tiny Do had a rap album that seemed a little violent, and it had a gun on the cover of the album, so they started investigating him. And so they go through his lyrics, and they're like, you know, we recognize that he doesn't have a gun, he never pulled a trigger, he's not the person who actually did the drive-by shootings, but we think that he might know something based on the lyrics in the album and based on the cover of the album. So as a result, we're going to prosecute him. Now, his case is ongoing, but this is not necessarily unprecedented, but it's rare for prosecutors to go after rappers for their music. If prosecutors went after singers or songwriters for their music, then I would say at least 80% of artists out there would be prosecuted right now. Now, that happened with Brandon Duncan. McKinley Phipps is actually an even more interesting case. He has already been convicted of second-degree murder. And what happened in that case was that back in 2001, apparently there was a 22-year-old man who was shot and killed, okay? And prosecutors thought, you know what, it's probably this rapper, because if you listen to his lyrics, it seems like he knew something about this, right? Although all of the witnesses in this case said that they were coerced and threatened into testimony against him, okay? So that already is a little questionable. And on top of that, rap lyrics cannot be a legitimate or even credible way of going after someone, because think about all the different artists out there that rap or sing about things that are violent. Eminem being one of them. He always pops onto the top of my head because he rapped about killing his wife in the most violent and brutal way imaginable.
Yeah, but he's white.
Yeah.
And that matters to these. I don't know. I remember from our previous story on Tiny Do. I don't think we have to stretch the bounds of imagination to know that this McKinley fellow who goes by Mac, he's probably black too. Look, man, there's no serious prosecutor in the country. Prosecutor, you're supposed to, Jank and I used to have these fights. I'm sure you had it with him too, Steve, 10, 15, 20 years ago, when he would be like, prosecutors, they're seeking truth, always, right? And like, what kind of a prosecutor whose job is to seek out the truth in a case decides to use gang lyrics, lyrics of a song? Again, it's a song. You want to call it a rap song because you think that makes it sound a little more badass. It's a song. It's like Frank Sinatra wrote songs, right? Mm-hmm. Bruce Springsteen writes songs. Bob Dylan writes songs. Irving Berlin wrote songs. Mm-hmm. And to use that to somehow coerce a guy into giving you information, threaten to take away his freedom because you want to find out about a crime that you're too incapable of solving.
I just think that this sets a bad precedent because it could violate freedom of expression. But there is a wrinkle to this story that I also want to present to you guys so, you understand that it's a lot more complex than it seems. So there was another case involving another rapper by the name of Ronald Heron, and he just got convicted of murdering 3 people, okay? So Ronald was convicted in June of murder, racketeering, robbery, and other charges following a month-long trial in federal court in Brooklyn. So he's described seeking out the guidance of a music promoter who suggested that he use subject matter from his experience growing up as the son of a crack addict father and shoplifter mother in a drug-plagued housing project in Brooklyn. prosecutors during their case played a clip they argued is proof of payback in the 2009 shooting and wounding of one of his top lieutenants, nicknamed Moose. He was filmed visiting Moose at a hospital and saying, "See you at the cemetery near you, man." What the government alleges was a warning to the assailant that he later tracked down and killed. Okay, so then they played his rap music, and his rap music was clear that he knew about it, that he was kind of boastful about it, and so as a result, he got convicted of this murder and 2 other murders. And then to top it off, after he was convicted, he showed absolutely no remorse for what had happened. Now, he denied that he had ever done anything, but in this case, the rap music actually did aid the prosecutors in their investigation.
Well, there's specificity in that. The Tiny Do's lyrics are not in any way specific to the crime being prosecuted. Clearly, prosecutors just thought he knew something and were trying to motivate cooperation.
So
That's what it
this
sounds
is
like.
so at the heart of the matter. This is a question of evidence. What evidence is admissible in court to prove or disprove a person's guilt or innocence? So I have no problems with using rap music or using any kind of music or anything that the suspect had said or done or written to use it against that person to prove a point. But, and this is a big but, you can't just say, listen to his rap music, he advocates for violence and thuggery, therefore he's a bad person, and he's a bad character, and therefore he must have done the crime. Yeah, and that's a very, that's a standard that's well established. So you can't bring in character evidence unless the suspect himself first introduces his good character. Then you can say, no, he has his bad character. But you can't use, whether it's rap music or other people saying that guy's a mean jerk or whatever, you can't bring that in as evidence to show that that he had a higher propensity.
That he's therefore the kind of person who would commit this specific crime.
So it has to be specific. So I have no problems with the general concept of using rap music to prosecute someone if that rap music is relevant and it's not being used as a way of like a generalized, he's a bad guy, he's a rapper. We know he's guilty.
The Heron case, that was specificity about a specific guy who ended up dead. That we have video of him. So that's clearly different than here. And we speculated when we did the Brandon Duncan case that there's not a jury in the world that was going to hear this evidence and convict him of any of these crimes he charged with conspiracy. And I think they threw the judge threw the Tiny Do case out. But it's totally different than the Heron case.
Yeah. I just worry because you would think that most prosecutors would have the same logic that you do when it comes to situations like this. But I think that a lot of times when it comes to rap music, it's used as character assassination against the artist, right? And so that worries me more than anything else, because could that lead to censorship?
Well, theoretically, there's 2 safeguards there. One is a prosecutor himself or herself shouldn't do that. You shouldn't assassinate a person's character, but I know they do that sometimes. The second safeguard is the judge. The judge should not allow that evidence into court. The jury should never even hear it. So for example, if let's say I'm being, if I'm on trial for murder, and let's say in my past I have, committed a bunch of other crimes, those crimes can't be discussed during my trial because, unless there was a certain relationship to this particular crime. There's a pattern, it ties together. But generally you can't bring that up. So the same thing here. I mean, again, I don't really care that it's rap music or it's country music or any other kind of music for that matter. If it's relevant, if it's specific and it's tied to that case, yes, admissible. If it's not, that's total bullshit. You're going after the person's character, and that's not right.
And you said the judge here. This is the judge. This was just like 2 weeks ago. A San Diego Superior Court judge decided not enough evidence to bring Duncan and the other guy to trial on these, and another guy to trial on the conspiracy charges because there's absolutely nothing there. And most prosecutors don't do this. This is the prosecutor here is incompetent.
That's incompetence.
Yeah,
it's embarrassing.
It's embarrassing
because this is a very, very well-established part of law that's been around for centuries, decades at least. So yeah, going after the person's character to prove an act that the person allegedly committed is just not going to work.